Welcome back to Innovation RC, guys. Today I'm going to be doing a full tutorial on how to build the brand new TLR Typhon, an absolute beauty of a vehicle, and we're going to build it into a track monster. Now, if that seems interesting, be sure to subscribe and like this video. We're gonna hop right into this. It was bound to happen, guys. We all knew this. When Lozi became a part of Horizon Hobby and Arrma was also a part, two amazing companies, they actually finally came together and spat out a beautiful TLR tuned Arrma Typhon. Now we are actually going to install the same exact system that was ran in my track Limitless. Yeah, I said Limitless. So I took my Limitless to the dirt oval and it actually did amazing. Now if you guys want to see this video, make sure you hit the link right up there and it's going to bring you right there. So we are actually going to install that same system in here. Well, it's not actually taken out, it's just another. Alrighty guys, we're gonna start wrenching on this guy right about now. Whoa! Alright, so I'm gonna go over exactly what I'm gonna be doing today. Obviously, we're gonna have to put the motor, servo, and receiver in, and I actually also have a little heatsink fan clamp that we're also gonna put on the motor. My ESC of choice is gonna be a Mamba Monster X8S. This is an absolutely amazingly overpowered ESC that isn't gonna overpower because we're only gonna be running it on 4S, and it's never gonna get hot. I'm also gonna be installing a center differential, if you guys noticed that. So that center differential viscosity inside the stock one, I believe it's like 10K or something like that. It's gonna drop to like 5K over really hard use. I actually put 60K diff fluid in here. So let's say when it gets really hot after being used a lot, it's actually going to loosen up to like 20K or 10K or whatever. So that's why I really have a center diff out over here. My motor of choice is going to be a 1512 1800 kV from Castle Creations. Now this motor is definitely not the biggest of what we've seen on the channel here, because we normally install these big guys. But this is really only going to be a 4S motor, and this vehicle is actually going to rely on how lightweight it is to get itself around the track. Hence why we're going to be using this. It's like half the length and size, and like it's missing like a 1/4 inch in girthness. That is pretty funny, but yeah. So I also have an original DX4S from Spektrum. I've always loved this remote. It's amazing, and I love the user interface. So that's why I chose this to be a track remote. Now my receiver of choice is actually an old school SRS 6000 AVC receiver from Spektrum. It is really old, but it still works really well, and honestly I had to go with this one. It has a lot of extra open ports and it just works for me. And of course we're gonna need our Arizona in case if I get thirsty while doing this. I always like Arizona and it's only $1. Step one, what we're gonna need to do is remove the center diff. It is really easy, and with doing so we're gonna have to remove 1 2 3 4 bolts. Whole center diff cap comes off, diff comes out. Then we're gonna have to put it back in, and that's what we're gonna do. Up next, I'm gonna remove the motor mount, and we're going to attach the motor mount. Then we're gonna have to mount the ESC, servo, receiver, calibrate everything, and that's what we're gonna do. Lift the diff up and out. There's our diff. And we're just going to want to plop it back in here, make sure the cups go in the right way, and that is already like that. We're going to want to close that cap. Now we're going to want to remove this. Alright, so here's our motor. The pinion gear is not on here with Loctite, but you're definitely going to need some. This is really just a 19 tooth. We're running with a 50 tooth spur, center diff. So we have everything in here. Here's our gear. All right, so what you need to acknowledge when you first install any kind of motor, you want to see which way you actually want to put it in, which way the wires are going to go, this and that. I actually want it to go like this because I could actually just keep it over on top of the center diff housing. Everything's going to be safe that way, and that's how I want to go about it. All right, so now that we see that the wires are going to go straight up and down here, we have to acknowledge our motor slide position as well. This is going to be up because that's where the 2 screws that are right over here are. So that's going to be like that. Now, I'm not actually going to mount it that way. I am going to put both of the flathead countersunk screws over here, and I'm actually going to flip the mount so I can put my Loctite so it doesn't get into the mount. I'm just going to place it exactly where it's going to be on top, and you're going to definitely want to start these bolts by hand. Now what I like to do is actually turn the flat side of the motor shaft towards me, because obviously I'm going to adjust the motor pinion exactly where that's going to be at. Now, if you guys can see up close, I'm going to Loctite my pinion, and this is what's going to definitely keep that gear on no matter what. All right, so you want to pretty much go along the side of the threads all the way around and like a dot on the top. Now the grub screw, what that's going to do is hold on to the motor shaft. Additionally, the thread staying on exactly where it needs to go. Now it may be kind of messy, but that's why you're going to want to clean it up after. Just start the threads and move it back and forth, and now it's definitely coated all around. You definitely don't want this gear coming off while you're running, or let's say actually competing. That's going to be maybe embarrassing, because something that's so simple and easy was completely looked over. You got to be sure you have Loctite. What is extremely imperative is our gear mesh. We got to make sure it is on point. So I am pretty much just Loctiting a little bit each of these motor bolts, or the slide bolts that hold the motor slide into the mount. You don't want too much Loctite, but you just want enough to where it covers enough of the threads. Keep in mind there are 2 bolts, so you don't need to have this whole motor mount down insanely tight. And I actually like to back off a little bit because we still need to set our gear mesh. So now both of the bolts are in, and what I'm going to want to do is very, very slowly move the gear away until I hear the clicking, just like that. Now we're going to want to lock one of them down lightly. We're going to want to feel it again. That feels good. So we're going to lock the one down, and we're going to lock this other one down right there, and we're good to go. That is our motor and center diff installed. Good stuff. Alrighty, tighty, lefty, loosey. Now we're going to want to loosen these ESC bolts up. They're meant to go onto a BLX 185 or the new Arrma 150 amp. We just want to get rid of these because we're going to be using tape. Now, if you guys see really, really close, I actually shaved this down right here. It's a little lip that actually keeps the ESC in place. Unfortunate, well, it's not unfortunate, it's just an is what it is kind of thing. The Mambo Monster X8S is just a tad longer. So to compensate, we just had to pretty much get rid of that little lip, and now it'll fit there perfectly. So before we actually apply any kind of tape, I have some alcohol right over here. And here is a little napkin. You just want to put some alcohol on it, and we're just going to want to clean the bottom of the ESCs so we ensure that there is a clean contact. You're going to want to make sure that all the alcohol evaporates and everything is dry. Additionally, we're going to have to do it over here, so make sure that you do this. Now we're going to want to apply our tape to the ESC, like right smack in the middle or something. Doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as it has enough contact all the way around. We're going to want to get rid of these right over here. Now, time to apply. Make sure that you get it in the right place where you really want it to be at. And I like to just rock it back and forth to ensure that all the tape is just clearly stuck between the ESC and the ESC mount. So now that we have the left side of the vehicle done, I really like to work from the left going to the right. So our last touch to it, aside the steering servo, is going to be the little fan clamp. So I'm going to just want to install it on here, just like this. I really like the clamp because it's low profile. It's by Power Hobby. Really cheap and expensive fan holder. You can mount the 30 to 40 millimeter fan on it. It's really simple, really easy. And just like that, we're going to run our little wire directly this way, and that's how it's going to go, right into the receiver. So if you guys notice, you do not see a little fan shroud cover. I actually removed it because there is a little bit of an issue where the little fan blade will actually catch it up on top and like toast itself out. So I removed it, and I soldered a direct receiver connection in, so it's going to have direct power instead of it being thermally controlled to turn on at exactly 120 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd rather it be on all the time because here in Florida everything already starts at 120. So now what we could do is actually plug in the little sensor wire. We're going to want to plug it directly into the back of the motor. Now I'm actually going to run it directly over to this little holder right here on the side of it. It's really convenient that it's there, and I'm actually going to want to just move all the wires. Get this as close as I can. We're going to put the other end of the sensor wire cable doohickey thing right over here. Hopefully it's a little bit easier to see, but now we have it directly going in from the motor. It's low profile. It's off to the side. Now I'm going to install the wires to the motor to the ESC. We have A, make sure you get it correct because you are actually running a censored motor. B goes to B, make sure phase C goes to phase C. Make sure it's also in all the way. That would also be very beneficial. And I'm actually going to wire the wires just like up over here. You guys are going to see exactly how I'm going to do it. It's going to be really nice and clean. Actually, even better, I'm actually going to mount the sensor wire down over here, and it's actually going to be held in by the little mud flap over here. It's not going to be able to go anywhere, so it's really low profile and it's right on the side of the car. Nothing is going to hit it. I like it there even better. Alrighty, now we're going to start making our way into a circle towards the left side. This is our ending point. So we're going to want to remove 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts right here to mount the steering servo, and 1, 2, 3, 4 just to remove the receiver cap. So we're going to do that right now. Alright, so let's remove the little box. Here is our receiver. I'm gonna probably want to mount it in just like this, facing frontward. Now, one thing that I really like to do, if you guys can see the foam that the wires go into at the receiver box, what I'll do, I'll actually put a little bit of like lube or grease or whatever, but just so that the wires can go in and out easy. All right, so I'm just gonna do one of these wires in here because we're just gonna clean everything up a little bit. So make sure that we have ground going away from the receiver. I would recommend to use needle nose pliers. It's going to be really easy. I like to run all of my wires underneath the drive shaft. I know that there's a little holder over here, but I prefer everything absolutely underneath and away from the drive shaft. Okie dokie, everything is nice and neat in there. Here's our ESC wire. We're going to want to do the same. Now, it is all based on if you like to run it underneath. You don't have to. I could see why it could be in some aspects better to run it above the drive shaft, but I like everything to be underneath. Personally, myself, just cleaner and just away from everything. Here's our ESC. So we're going to put it in throttle or channel 2. Going to make it super nice and neat. We're going to put a little zip tie right there. And cut it. I'm actually going to run it on this side of the receiver, so it's actually going to hold it in against the tape a certain way. So that is all good just like that. Make sure that is in. Now I already know that this is going to hit the body, so you could always trim that up or like bend it back or whatever. Or we could cheat and use a little bit of fire. Screw it, let's cheat. Let's use a little bit of fire. Make sure you're extremely quick with this. If you want to have this bent a certain way, make sure you also do not get the receiver wire. Do not keep the flame on a certain point for too long either. You just want it enough to where you can bend it back a little bit. And there you go. Stays back just like that. Works like a charm every time. Now, another thing that I do like to do, because sometimes it may be confusing for others when mounting your steering servo, make sure that the tires are straight, because sometimes it may be confusing which way you should mount it and you might get the horn on wrong, but we're gonna solve that up today. So you want your Ackerman arm basically in a 90-degree angle, if you guys could see that. So you want it just like that. Now, if we could see if it's at 90 degrees, now it looks like the servo horn is going to be more towards the left side. So that's where we're going to want the top end of the sprocket. All right, so now that we actually see the steering servo right over here, we're going to want to put it over here. I like to save this one specifically for the last wire that's going to go into the receiver box, mainly because it's got this little protective insulation thing over it. So obviously that's going to be last. We got to make sure our ground wire is going on the outside. Just like that. Now all the wires are in. There's a lot of wires. Now I'm not going to close that up yet, because now we're going to want to power the car on and make sure we calibrate everything. Now notice that there is a bind plug in there. It's really hard to see, but the older style Spectrum receivers, you're going to have to bind manually. The other ones just have a button that you got to hold on as you power the vehicle on. So we have a 3S battery, nothing too crazy. Now you guys can see that there are like bullets on here. I really like to use the bullets all the way around. So these are pretty much on the speed cars. So I'll actually use their 4S's in the track car. So I'm marrying actually the same bullets on here. So normally you're going to want to just run, let's say, EC5 or IC5 connectors if you are doing that kind of stuff with the track and all that. But in this case, I will be running the bullets. Whoa, look at that. Everything turns right on. All right, so being that this remote is actually discontinued, this isn't really a how-to because all the newer ones are so much easier to bind, but it's almost the same way. We're going to want to go to bind. If you guys could see that, it's going to be in there. Now we're going to not want to hit that button yet. As we turn it on, the receiver is actually going to blink. That is going to actually let us know that it's in bind mode. So you can see the blinking. Now I'm going to want to hit bind. That blinks. Now it's all good to go. Just give it a couple seconds. There we go. Now the ESC recognized neutral. Now we just removed the bind plug. We do not need this anymore. Everything is bound and everything is good. What I'm going to need to do is actually make sure that this horn is on, because we still never put the horn onto the steering servo. As I said before, I'm going to want to make sure these tires are going straight as possible, because we're still going to have to do an alignment regardless. We're just going to want to position the angle, as I said, the 90-degree angle, exactly how that is. So what I'm going to do now, before I put this little bolt and lock the steering in, you're going to want to make sure that the car is as straight as possible. Now the remote is on and our steering trim is set to 0. You got to be sure that your steering trim is as neutral as possible. So let's do it right now. There we go. So now, you guys can see we have our steering, everything is in the center, and I'm going to want to lock it down real quick before the Loctite on it dries. Still making sure that the car is looking straight, because that's definitely going to be needed. Look at that. Now that everything is actually on, what I'm going to want to do is close up the receiver box. Now, if everything is done right, the steering should actually correct itself to look straight as soon as I turn the car and it arms. So let's try it out. Look at that. We're good. All right, so now that it's castle, I'm going to show you guys how to calibrate it the correct way. So what we're going to do once we put the car on, we're going to have to instantly go full throttle, release, reverse, release, and just let it sit and let it do its thing. And this has to do with all the newer, no matter what remote you have, no matter what Castle ESC you have, they are all calibrated the same way. So take note on this. So what we're going to need to do is go full throttle. There we go. Now it's chiming. Release, full reverse, release, and we're actually good. All right, let's try her out just a little bit. Oh no, it's going in reverse. Well, that's not good, and we don't want to touch it through the remote. What do we do? All right, so if this happens with your sensors set up, you really just have to reverse the motor rotation, and that's really, really easy. All done with the Castle link. Now there's a USB all the way down there with this little connector, and we're actually going to want to connect it with the ESC to receiver plug. So I'm actually just going to pull that out right now, just like that. If you guys can see, it's all hooked up, and when that is plugged in, you're going to see this Mamba Monster X 8S. So that is obviously the ESC that we are running right over here, and we're actually going to want to like tune it a little bit. We can move the BEC voltage, which is going to be for like our steering or the fans or whatever else that's getting power, up to 6 volts. I'm going to put that up to 6, originally on 5.5. Our brake amount, I'll probably put it on like 40, a little bit less brake. I don't need to stop on a dime. Our reverse, we do not need a lot, so I'll just put it down to 25%. Nothing over here. Now the motor, we got to reverse the motor direction. If you guys could see that, we're going to reverse it right there. And I personally like to take all the timing out if I'm going on the track, just so that it would stay as efficient as possible. I also like my motor to be cut off around 180 at most. Generally, it never gets above 140 or 130 if you're running it set up right on 4S. Other than that, you really don't need to mess with anything else. It does not need to be updated. And we're going to want to go down here and hit update. Now put all the information that we just did over here all the way into the ESC right there. All right, so the remote is on, everything is back together. We have the receiver box back up on top. So here we go, guys. I'm going to turn this on and everything should be going the right way. If I hit the throttle, it should go straight. Here we go. Nice. That is exactly what I want to see. And we're just about done. And now we are finally done. If you guys noticed, the wires were all messy before. I did a little bit of wire managing myself, and I would really recommend you guys to use some zip ties to take them away from the drivetrain or the gears or whatever. There's absolutely no possible way that they can get caught in the drivetrain or whatever. So make sure you're clean about it and take a lot of pride. If you guys made it this far, you did a really good job. So if you guys really enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and subscribe for more. We'll have a lot more helpful videos coming out that can really help you. I'm gonna actually have a playlist like right over here somewhere. If you want to click that, I'm gonna have review and how-to videos all in there that can only benefit you guys, so I would be sure to check that out. Alrighty guys, so we are just about done here. As always, stay safe and have a good one.